your time and patience. We will be beginning our acting process lecture series for contact with the present. And I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Michael Maher. Michael Maher is a PhD, is a director and co-founder of the Reed Center. He's a therapist and trainer who specializes in evidence therapies of anxieties and OCD and related challenges, including health anxiety. Contextual behavioral science is at the center of his approach to treatment and training at the center, where he trains therapists in the principles of ACT and RFT. And prior to opening the Reed Center, Dr. Maher was a research scientist at the Center for OCD and Related Disorders at Columbia University Medical Center. His work there focused on improving treatments for those who suffer from anxiety, OCD, and related disorders. He is currently the past president of NYC ACBS chapter. All right, with that,
thanks.
Welcome.
Just in terms of sharing screen.
Let me share that with you.
Thanks so much. Just to kind of let people know what was going on, we were here at the new school and we were double booked in a room that had a class. So we Abu has been very flexible, using his ACT skills to get us into a different space and get this going. So apologies for the delay. Can I share likely?
Yeah, it should be good to share that.
Fantastic. Just bear with me here. Well, hopefully I get this fairly away that y'all can see. Is that coming through pretty decently? Okay, fantastic. And Abu, I wonder, do we need this camera? Because I realized or if I'm sharing screen, maybe it looks fine to you.
It does show up there.
Great. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for your patience. Tonight I'll be talking about exploring present moment awareness as part of the ACT series that's been going on. Kind of excited to be doing this topic. Present moment awareness is actually kind of in many ways at the center of kind of entering into the psychological flexibility processes. And when we can kind of see this here, so slides going. When we think about psychological flexibility in ACT, which is at the heart of ACT, what we see is present moment awareness is at the center of that. So Hayes and Strassel define that as the ability to contact the present moment more fully as a conscious human being, and based on what the situation affords, to change or persist in behavior in order to serve valued ends. So the way we're kind of entering into contacting these sort of processes that we experience in ACT is welcome. We have a participant in person. Hi there. So the way we enter into these processes is through present moment awareness. Okay. So how do we cultivate psychological flexibility? We think of that in two ways. One is through attentional strategies like mindfulness and perspective taking, and that's what we'll be spending more time on tonight, as well as behavioral strategies, including value-based actions like exposure therapies, as well as behavioral activation, which are values-based. Interestingly, in ACT, though, we also have a kind of non-dual system, right? So we don't differentiate strongly between cognition and behavior. We think of those on a continuum. So when a person's attending or engaging in mindfulness, they're also engaging in behavior, right? So that we have kind of a distinction here between observable behavior and covert or internal behavior. in the spirit of the present moment, I want to acknowledge we have a guest here in person, we have Abu here. So I'm gonna probably look mostly at the screen because a lot of our participants are here, and I sometimes look up.
I'm so sorry, I didn't even realize this was available on Zoom, so.
No, we were super excited to have people come in person, and then we were double booked in a room, so.
Got it.
It's
And I
nice.
apologize, I only can stay for a short time.
No problem, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thanks so much. So the kind of at the heart of psychological flexibility is mindfulness strategy. So then the question is, what is mindfulness? So as we're kind of going deeper into how do we connect with psychological flexibility? How do we connect with those processes? It's through present moment awareness. How do we connect with present moment awareness? A way that we think about that is through mindfulness. A widely utilized definition of mindfulness in ACT is when we've heard from Jon Kabat-Zinn, paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally in the service of understanding and wisdom. And just to unpack that a little bit, there's quite a bit there, right? We're taking our attention and attending to some aspect of our experience deliberately intentionally. And we're doing that with a stance of non-judgmentalness, right? With a sense of openness and in the service of greater understanding, of in the service of contacting what's important. So that kind of brings us into a common way of presenting psychological flexibility in ACT. If people have either been read an intro to ACT, or maybe you know a lot about ACT, or you've been to some of these other lectures, you've seen this. This is also, it's called the hexaflex or hexagon in ACT. And what we see right up at the top, right, is present moment awareness. It's the way into the other processes in many ways. And these processes are really all connected through what we think of as psychological flexibility. But what's interesting about the present moment in particular is that we kind of can easily take it for granted, in the same way that like a fish in water doesn't necessarily notice the medium it swims in, the way that we kind of breathe in and take for granted the air around us, right? Present moment awareness is very much like that. And so I'm hoping in our work tonight, we'll be able to contact what that experience is in a way that allows us to do better work with our clients, for those of us who are clinicians, with ourselves personally in our relationships. Another really cool thing about ACT is that unlike many therapeutic approaches, it has this like, almost as this sort of, the core of this describes a lot of flexibility. So it's relevant to how we live our lives, it can be, how we do our work, as well as how we help our clients to get to more flexible, open places where they can connect with what matters, through being present, through being open and aware. So if we kind of go around and think about how does present moment awareness like show up and how is it important in these processes, if we kind of go to the left, acceptance is opening up, right? And if we're going to open up to our experience, we actually have to be present to it, right? And that may seem obvious, and yet it can be very difficult to do, especially in the presence of difficult aversive experiences, right? We may find ourselves, or clients shutting down, making it kind of difficult to connect with what's going on. We may find our thoughts very kind of narrowed down or rigid, which also can be kind of aimed at the future or the past, with things that we're highly hyper-focused on, right? So being present also means being able to contact our thoughts and notice those as things, as opposed to seeing through those and having the effects of seeing through a thought that narrows us down. I recognize that people don't necessarily have a lot of experience with what defusion means. what we're talking about here is going from thinking a thought like, wow, maybe everyone's just judging me for, having started this talk late, right? And I could be seeing through that and I could be like really anxious about it. Or I could notice there's a thought showing up in my mind, and it's a fair thought, but it's not terribly useful to me right now, right? So it's one I could see, it's one I can imagine coming up. And then I have more room to sort of let that go, right? Be a little bit more flexible with it, but I need to be present to the thoughts I'm having in order to do that. Another, oops, there's lights. Another process that we think about in ACT is self as context. And that's sort of perspective taking, that's taking a broader perspective on the part of us that is observing. And there too, right, that's actually in line with present moment experience as the aware sort of pillar, right? So we can think of 3 pillars in here: open, which is acceptance, diffusion, and presence. And more folks coming, so this is an exercise in psychological stability. It's kind of cool. Hi there. Are you guys here for the lecture?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, come on in. No, that's okay. Sorry, it was difficult to find because they double booked us.
It's okay.
Well, I'm glad you found this. Welcome. Yeah, make yourself comfortable. And I'm just going to be addressing the group on Zoom a fair amount, and I'll try to also be kind of paying attention to all of us. Yeah, of course. So just kind of going around the hexagon here, we can think of self as context, right, as this way of experiencing the present moment from a more flexible position, and a position of kind of pure awareness or observing self. We can also move our perspective around and think of the perspective that the perspective of like ourselves here now. We can also think of the perspective of the person across from us here in the present. And we could imagine what it looks like to be looking back at ourselves, right? We can imagine what it's like to look at a future self or a past self. So there's a lot of flexibility in that, but the place in which we can contact that, again, is through our current awareness. And then values and committed action inherently is happening in the present, but we of course can do things in an automatic way where we're switched off, or we can do things in a way in which there's an awareness, a commitment to the action we're taking right now. And in terms of values, showing up and being present to what matters in our life as a process means we're actually tuned into what's going on, to what we're feeling, those qualities of experience. So in some sense, right, we're kind of utilizing the present moment as a door into all these other processes. Present moment awareness is also super helpful when we're in the therapy room with others, right? So we may be kind of looking for what processes are relevant, what processes are going on in our clients. And we can think of that both in terms of, do we see flexibility showing up? And we can also think of it in terms of, do we see sort of inflexibility showing up, right? So it's also quite helpful to have this psychological inflexibility kind of model reflected from the flexibility model, to think about, what does it mean when we're not in the present moment? Because we kind of always are, right? And it's not so much that we're not here, but our attention's not here. We're shifting our focus back to the past, what might have happened, how did things go, and being preoccupied with that. And we're shifting them maybe into the future, where we're concerned about how things will go. What's going to happen to me, what's going to happen, and am I going to be able to manage things, all sorts of anxieties, right, that are typical. So we can also see in the other processes this kind of inflexibilities that typically show up. Just kind of looking for a way, let's see if, hey, Abu, Is there any way these guys could see is that we could share that with everyone, or is that like not
Do you
easy
have,
to?
do you have a phone on you?
Maybe we can attend the Zoom. Sure. To sit in it right now.
Fantastic. So then the question is, what does psychological flexibility look like? You know, so we're talking about it, but what does that look like when we connect with it, right? And when we bring it into our work, when we bring it into our lives. This is not the first example I would think of, but was quite struck when I first saw it, which is this quote from Mark Vansel talking about Michael Jordan. And he says, Michael Jordan is a mystic. He was never anywhere else. His gift wasn't that he could jump high, run fast, shoot a basketball. His gift was that he was completely present. Most people struggle to be present, and they live in fear because they project the past into the future. This wasn't a problem for Jordan. Michael would say, why would I worry about missing a shot I haven't taken? I was really kind of struck by this in thinking about this kind of elite athlete who defined the sport that he played in terms of his ability to actually be able to connect with the present as his superpower. And it was interesting as I looked a little into it, he actually worked with a mindfulness coach, George Mumford, who has done a lot of work with mindfulness in sports and athletics. And it was actually something both he and Kobe Bryant studied under Mumford and actually cultivated as a part of their expertise in their field, as part of their sort of kind of unmatched athleticism and dominance of basketball. Another way of thinking about present moment comes up in this quote by Pema Chodron, which I quite like. So I'd like people to just kind of take this in for a moment. Every moment is unique. It's never happened, and it will never happen again. Here we're kind of thinking about the present moment as a flow of experience. And what I'd like us to do for a moment here is to just kind of settle into that kind of perspective, and just see if I can expand my perspective on you guys and see if I can see it a little bit better. And that doesn't work. And it's just kind of, it's nice to be able to see everyone.
I see everyone.
That's just on my view. So it's nothing you need to do. Thanks so much. Okay, yeah, it's fine. So yeah, what I'd like us to do for a moment is just kind of sit mindfully, could kind of get upright in your chair in a comfortable way. You could either close your eyes or just focus on a point in front of you for a few moments. And I'd like you to just kind of dwell on this idea of this unique moment that you're in. As you kind of draw in a breath, breathing in, noticing that this is the first time you've breathed in the breath you're breathing. As you breathe out, it's the last time you'll breathe that breath. And then there's another. And just kind of situating yourself in that awareness. Just kind of awareness of the current moment. Noticing as you breathe in, sensation of the breath. And as you breathe out, the experience of just being here now. Notice a thought or feeling pull your attention, just gently notice that. Gently come back to the breath. Breath expanding the awareness to include those sensations and thoughts as a part of your present experience. And when you're ready, looking gently, allow your eyes to open, but just bring your attention back into space that we're sharing together. It's a hopeful way to kind of slow my own thoughts down with a little bit of chaos starting out, or which is kind of cool, right? Because it's exactly what ACT is about. Kind of touch on that in a little while, right? The present moment isn't the pleasant moment necessarily. It's actually much more than that. It's just about everything, right? And that includes difficulties, challenges, anxiety, joy. I'm just curious, and there's another kind of committed action that feels like, let's see what happens here. Are there any observations? And I'm not sure how the sound is going to go. So should I turn my sound up to hear people's participation?
Oh, you want to hear? Okay. What I will do,
Yeah.
I have my mic.
Should I turn this off? And then
I'm gonna mute you over here for now.
Does anyone have any observations of that?
See if they'll hear you from here right now, and then you should hear cameras, laptop as well.
Great. Let me just stop sharing for 2 seconds so I can see all of you. Just really nice.
Are there any volunteers who would like to share?
Really nice.
Share what?
Any observations, just kind of what you noticed as you sat, kind of in this kind of moment for a moment, just mindful.
I feel like for me, like I focus on the current moment, and sometimes I start thinking about because I just like changed from one hotel to the other. And I start thinking about what was happening like 30 minutes ago. But I allowed that to happen. But when you said like let it come back, and then just like let it come back. Focus on like this room and like the sound of the computer.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, just kind of noticing thoughts coming up.
Yeah.
And recognizing maybe that's all kind of a flow of what our current experience is.
Yeah.
And if I realize it might be useful if it is useful to put anything in the chat, you're welcome to do that too. That might be an easier way to sort of note observations for people online, but you're also welcome to unmute and share if you like.
I noticed that that quote, as I was kind of pondering it, really inspired a lot of like gratitude in me. Because like I had a bad day, like I just had one of those days where everything went wrong, and I spent the whole day being like, and then as I was here listening to that quote and thinking about it, like I wasted precious moments being worked up when I could have, kind of gotten in touch a little bit with the present moment. So I thought that quote was really powerful, and just kind of reflecting on it was really helpful.
Thanks, Alyssa. We appreciate that. Yeah, just kind of letting that kind of awareness resonate, I find to be really quite powerful. Just right, the kind of noticing what we usually don't notice. So I'm gonna jump back to sharing screen and
Michael, do you mind if I add something as well?
oh yeah, please.
In terms of a current present moment experience, I feel that we heard a lot of ambulances, we heard honking, a lot of city sounds.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you're in Manhattan when you got all this noise going on around you. And you want to be present in the moment, but in New York City, that is part of being present. You gotta get used to that noise and expect that noise. And who knows, somebody feels kind of relaxing in its own way.
Yeah, I really like that. It's funny, we're here at the new school, which is on 5th and 13th, and sort of reminded that John Cage, thanks so much. John Cage, the composer, actually chose to live on the corner of 13th Street and 6th Avenue because he really appreciated just what I was talking about, this kind of symphony of sounds that you get here in the city. That, if you know Cage's compositions, they were very much based on sort of natural sound and just that a piece, in fact, in a hall in which the piece was generated, the audience shifting in their seats and often moving around. Okay, I'm gonna keep giving that off and on a little bit. Okay, great. Let's move through the slides here. So, present moment is where everything happens. Right? That's kind of what we're starting to notice here. And in that sense, it's the place where we can connect with a sense of meaning, purpose, and vitality, as we've been talking about. And it's also where we confront and respond to painful and challenging experiences. So it's very much a question of how we want to show up and how we do show up. And one of the kind of maybe paradoxes with an ACT is we don't fully think of the mindfulness strategies and present moment work as soothing, as a way of de-stressing. That happens, but as we see sort of Steve Hayes' kind of quote here, the mindfulness work doesn't self-soothe and make all of that easy, all of that kind of catastrophe of life. Instead, it gives us the openness, grounding, and consciousness to be able to move our attention in a non-suppressive way for what we care about. And again, this is very much kind of holding this balance and ACT between what shows up and what we're moving in the direction of, right? Because if what shows up is challenges, painful experience, and if you're a human being, we know that's going to happen, then it's about being able to slow ourselves down, to stabilize, to kind of bring our attention with intention toward what matters. So cultivating this practice is not easy. In fact, that's why we see Buddhist nuns, practitioners of Buddhism like Jon Kabat-Zinn and Chodron, as well as people who have spent their careers researching and understanding psychological flexibility. Steve Hayes, Kelly Wilson, Kirk Strassel, and so many others, honing in on this specific skill and all the multitude of ways in which we can learn to do it. So as we kind of think about present moment awareness, we think about returning to the present moment, because that's where everything's happening. Yeah, when I'm aware of this, I don't know if yeah, so I'm twice. If it helps. Let's see, can people hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Or is it an echo? Little bit of an echo. Where's that coming from? You're right. I'll turn mine on. Okay, so people see. Nope, it's echoing out of something else. You just turn that off. Oh, no, I'll just turn this on. There we go. Cool, okay. Sorry for that. I'm going technical. It's definitely like a really nice opportunity to practice these skills. It's like having some kind of change in the present is like that. Can be a nice opportunity. So there are different ways in which we're going to enter into the present moment. One of those, like what we just did before, is the breath. And one way that I actually like to kind of help train present moment awareness is through helping people establish a kind of pace to the breathing. So I'm going to just actually do something that I will do in my sessions with others, which is a kind of cool app, which is called, I don't know if people know this one, it's called Breathing Zone. And what this kind of allows us to do is just follow along. Let's see if I can, you can just follow along. So what this does is sort of has some sound here too. It kind of, on the in breath, it expands. On the out breath, it sort of contracts.
What is the name of that?
Oh, I can come back to the details of it. It's called Breathing Zone, but you don't need to pull it right now. So you can just watch here. And so what this does is kind of gives us a pace, and I'm just going to explain what it's doing. And then I'm going to have us just sort of coordinate our breath for a moment with it. So what we're doing here is using a kind of 5-second in breath, 5-second out breath. And that pace has been shown to be really optimal for a number of things such as heart rate variability, the ability to kind of slow down and be in a kind of more mindful state. And it's also correlated with, inversely correlated with anxiety and depressive processes. Something that one of my professors in graduate school had studied. He was a student of Lockett's and he did systematic desensitization work. And so this is a nice way of just training that kind of gentle pace. One of the things that clients sometimes will report is they have difficulty when they're trying to take a deep breath of feeling like quickly overwhelmed because they'll breathe in really fast, taking kind of full capacity. So here what we're doing is we're breathing in at a slower pace. We're kind of breathing out. So I'm just going to let us kind of follow that for a moment together, or 2 minutes, and then we're going to move to some other strategies. But in terms of how do we contact present moment, how do we teach these mindfulness skills from the ground up? I find this a very useful way for folks who may not have as much experience. We'll just kind of listen to that and coordinate with them. So I'm just going to pause that for a moment. And I'm going to just move us into that pace worked for you. You can continue it. If it was a little slower than you're comfortable with, that's fine. You can just find a pace that works for you. I'm just going to move us into starting to kind of, again, bring our attention into the present. We can either close our eyes now or just find a point in front of us. Either is fine. Sometimes keeping our eyes open with a fixed point allows us to be kind of more grounded if you're tired or feeling like internally distracted. That can be a nice way of grounding. And if you're feeling like it's helpful to close your eyes and just kind of bring that visual piece out, we'll do that. I'd like you to just kind of return to that pace of breathing that we were just doing. Gently breathing in and breathing out. Just noticing the kind of slow and deep pace of the breath coming in and gently going out. Now, I'd like to invite you to just bring your attention to the sensation of your body in the chair where you're sitting. Just notice the kind of places where your body is in contact with the chair. And the edges of where it's no longer in contact. Breathing in and out gently as you expand your awareness to these sensations. And then noticing the sensation of your feet on the floor. Just noticing the toes, the balls of the feet, the sensation of the whole foot, whatever way you feel it. And just coordinating that awareness with a gentle breath coming in, going out. Maybe recognizing this is the only time you'll experience these sensations and this breath quite this way. So draw in the breath and gently exhale. Now I'd just like you to notice the sounds around you. You may notice sounds up close and sounds in the distance. Again, coordinating that, the breath coming in, just expanding your awareness out to include the sounds coming in. Noticing sounds coming into awareness and dropping away. Noticing prominent sound and distant sounds. And if your mind wants to make sense of them, just gently notice that and return your attention back to the breath, into this expanded sense of awareness, to your environment, and experience of sound coming in. Now, gently return focus of your attention to your breath. Again, noticing the gentle expansion of the in-breath and the gentle fall of the out-breath. Noticing the cool sensation as you breathe in, and the slightly warm sensation of the exhale. And when you're ready, you can gently just allow your attention to kind of return to your body. Maybe gently opening your eyes and noticing the sense of light in contrast to having your eyes closed, if they've been open, if they've been closed. And then bring your attention back into the room, back into the group here together. And I'm gonna again attempt to kind of ask if anyone had any observations as they did that. That can be helpful because chances are the observations you have might be the types of observations, difficulties, or things you notice that your clients experience. So yeah, if anyone either wants to put comments in the chat or just turn on your microphone. And again, I'm gonna stop sharing so I can kind of see how there it is. Let's see.
I'm willing to share.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I noticed this just sense of like a release and tension in my body, and I noticed it was like a feeling of relaxation, and then I kind of noticed my mind kind of hooking me on this isn't the goal necessarily. I tried to come back to noticing what was happening in my body and not letting kind of the judgments carry me away, and it was pleasant to sit in that moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, right. It's kind of, in some sense, if we can be open to whatever's showing up, right, and then our mind is going to comment, and that's part of what's showing up, and we can notice that too. Yeah, thank you so much. Any other observations? I think there's someone here in the
Oh,
room.
I just had a question. Like,
Yeah.
when comparing the first one, I feel more relaxed.
Mm,
Yeah, also I had like, so
mm,
I like fall asleep. So,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's a really common
yeah,
common thing, right? We can feel such a sense of relaxation that we can nod out.
yeah. It's like the, how do you pronounce it? Hypnosis or something.
Mm,
Hypnosis.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay.
It's like, cause your voice is so like soothing.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right, we can sometimes that's actually really quite useful, right? Because sometimes with our clients, they may come in and be really revved up, and then suddenly they slow down enough, and they might even fall asleep. So if we notice that happening, we might, open a window. we might keep our eyes open to ground, or we might just let that happen, and then
Yeah.
we kind of
Allow
come
that.
back in. Yeah. I appreciate that. Right. So when we're working with the present moment, we start to notice a lot of things happening. We notice, right? We're like people are noticing like the type of day they had, the way their thoughts are showing up. Right? We're starting to kind of connect with this experience of that we don't always experience in that way. And we start to notice small details. Sometimes I don't know if anyone else kind of noticed as we brought our attention to different aspects of our experience that those maybe populated our awareness in a way that they usually don't, like sound. It's certainly okay if not too. Some people may live in a very acute state of awareness, kind of mindfulness, or where you might have found that your mind was really loud. That information is quite useful because when we're working one-on-one with our clients, it's useful to check in, right, and better understand. So I'm going to go back to trying to share screen. Let's see how that goes. Let's see. All right. So another way of coming into the present is, oops, I have to change my slide. There it is. Another way of coming to the present is to help access other ACT processes, other flexibility processes, such as noticing our thoughts, feelings, and sensations as they arise, noticing our perspective and that of others, and noticing how we can move toward who and what matters in our lives, and in the lives of the people we work with. So another way to kind of enter into that is to sometimes do an exercise that allows us to connect with some of these experiences and just kind of mindfully work through one of those after another. So that's the kind of exercise I'd like to do now. And realizing I'm doing a lot of experiential work. And at the same time, I kind of want to pause, like, and just ask. I do a lot of training, and I really, kind of can appreciate that sometimes people have questions about, some of what we've covered, like how it works. So just want to check in. Does anyone have any questions so far in terms of what we're doing, in terms of how these processes might be relevant to the work you do, or how you would teach them, or just maybe, a question other than this?
I had a question. I also noticed a
Looks
pretty
like
big
Chris,
difference.
you might be
Yes.
interested. If you want to just unmute.
oh,
We
here.
just need to actually turn up our volume. Now I think
Okay.
we can.
Can you
Thanks,
hear me
Chris.
okay?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I noticed a big difference between the first exercise and the second one, with the addition of the breath. So is that something that's utilized more frequently? Like, is the breath an important part of it? Because the first one, I was more focused on my thoughts. It wasn't a negative experience, but the second one, I really felt relaxed, and the thoughts weren't quite as there. So is it just you can use these things in different ways, or like what is the breath like a really important part of this?
That's a great question. Yeah, the breath is frequently used in mindfulness training because it's always here. You know, it's so immediate and close, and in some sense, it's a kind of vital part of the present moment, right? Because if suddenly the oxygen in the room, you know, wasn't there, right, we would notice it, right? And so this kind of ability, it's just so integral to the rhythms of our experience to kind of tune into that. It's like one of the things that's most immediately available. And it's the kind of a foundation for then expanding out awareness. So what we also did there, right, was sort of notice sensation, notice sounds, and grounding in the breath can really help steady that. So yeah, for sure. And I guess one of the things I'd also say is, as I was saying before, when we were doing the kind of pacing of the breath, one of the things we know physiologically is when we get to that slower pacing, our nervous systems do slow down. And we could use that in the service of relaxing, but we could also use it sort of as that quote from Steve Hayes showed, in the service of fixing our attention, broadening our attention, moving it around in a more flexible way in order to experience what's coming up and how we can move into parts of our experience that we care about, that are meaningful and important, which also might be experiencing some difficulty and pain, right? Like some of us or some of our clients might have very difficult relationships that they need to work with. That may mean coming home and having a child or a teenager who's going through a hard time. And that might be really hard and painful. And so if we can slow ourselves down, we're not trying to be so calm that we don't feel those things. We're trying to slow ourselves down so we have the foundation of conscious awareness to open up to what we need to pay attention to in order to work with who and what is important, in order to connect with who and what's important. Does that make some sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for your question. Just going to check in and see if any other questions. I want to ask, and if people would be willing to even type this in the chat, are a lot of therapists here, or are people doing other things like maybe students or teachers or coaches? Just curious, kind of who you all are. I know a few of you, and I know you're therapists, but it's nice to hear your faces. A lot of people, therapists, some students. Fantastic. Some folks up in Westchester. Yeah, that's the nice part of the Zoom, right? Can kind of all connect here. And student. So, okay, yeah. So what I'm going to do next, actually, is I'm going to, in the service of time, I'd like to do something interactive, and I'm going to see how that goes. But I think it might go okay. And I'm going to ask Abdu here to help me out with this. So I'm gonna just move through some of the slides that I have. I realized like I could probably have spent more time on, given a longer talk, which you never know until you do it. So one thing I just want to kind of point out that's something that kind of brings together what we've been talking about is this concept in active and in functional contextualism of tracking. Tracking is like paying attention to what in our experience works and what doesn't, so we can effectively connect to who and what matters, right? And so, you've heard me say a lot, who and what matters, and in some ways, those are the qualities of experience that we're talking about when we think about values and committed action. So tracking is helping our clients build what we call context sensitivity. Context sensitivity is being able to tune into what matters in a certain context, right? Like we're here at the new school, and as Abu was saying, New York City's outside, the lights are going off. There's like a class in the room where we were supposed to be playing like a film, right? So there's all this stuff going on, but as I noticed those things, I also chose to kind of let those things come through and just filter through, bringing my attention back to you all, back to what I'm doing here. Right. So the context sensitivity here is, are those thoughts coming up about, judgments about like, whoa, this is like kind of hectic, or are people experiencing the way I want to? Those aren't necessarily too helpful. They're a little helpful, right? I can check in, are you hearing me? Can I do the best job I can? But they're also probably a little unhelpful if I get hooked by them, right? They take me away from this moment. So when we're working with our clients, it's the same thing, right? We're helping them track what's important, right? Because they may be caught up in thoughts and feelings about the future, what's going to happen, about the past, what did happen. And we can try to help them come into the present and pay attention to what's available now. Because the interesting thing in this ACT work is, as we understand the qualities of experience, we can see almost all of them are always available in the present. So something that I'd like to do kind of next is, and maybe these are ideas that if you're interested in them and you want to continue to cultivate them, I would say someone who does just amazing work on values is Kelly Wilson. There's a course in an organization called Praxis, where Kelly has a course on values that you can take at your own rate. And I share this mostly just because he's someone I've done a lot of work with and really experienced a deepening in my own awareness and practice of ACT. And it's really expanded my ability to appreciate the clients I work with. I think in the past, I would hear my clients talk about values and I'd be happy for them, but I'd be like, well, that's great. And then let's get to what's getting in the way of, your suffering, or what's causing your suffering, right? I'd come to the kind of parts of their experience that I wanted to work on as a CBT therapist. And while that was helpful in many ways, I think it sometimes failed to take in the broader picture of the full person in front of me. And I think there's a way to take that full person in a way that we can listen for what is working, where they're flexible and engaged, and we can listen for where they're inflexible and stuck. And we can help work on that as a full kind of picture, as opposed to a more narrowed down approach. And that expanded view, I think, can be shared with clients in a way that really models what we're trying to help them do, right? Which is expand their awareness to see, yeah, life can be painful and just incredible, right? And we can kind of touch both of those and work with both of those at once. So what I'd like to do next is think about kind of present moment experience with clients. And I'm going to do a little bit of a role play. And what I'd like us to do is, in this role play, Ab is going to help me out. He just learned about this. I know Ab is flexible. I super appreciate that. We're going to, Ab is going to play a client with high anxiety. Do you know any clients like that as you encountered some?
Quite a number.
Okay, all right, that's awesome. I had a feeling that was the case. And what we're going to do in the first step, and I want to like turn the camera so that you're visible too in a moment, is I want us to think about these sort of different ways of mindfully noticing how our clients show up. You can notice how I'm showing up too, but the focus will be on just noticing how the client shows up in this case. So it's listening for the processes of flexibility and inflexibility, listening to what our clients say and how they say it, noticing patterns of worry, fusion, rumination, to the sense of engagement, meaning, and passion and motivation, or the absence of those, and recognizing patterns in physical presence, like breathing, movements, posture, eye contact. A lot of that you'll be able to see here. Some of it you might not be able to, just in terms of video. And looking at kind of transitions, flexibility and changes, right? And so this is something that Kelly Wilson brings our attention to in Mindfulness for Two. It's one of the best therapy books I've read, both in ACT and outside, I would say. So again, if you're interested in understanding more about where this is coming from, how do we bring kind of this present moment awareness, into our work in the room, Mindfulness too is a fantastic place to look. But now I'm just going to do a little bit of a role play just for a few minutes with Abu, and then if people can kind of notice what you see, and then I'll ask you to put that in the chat, or maybe just kind of turn on your mic if you're comfortable with it next. Okay, great.
I'll do.
So should I unshare and then
Oh, yeah.
and then we could just let's see. Is this? I'm not sure.
Yes, I have it. You spotlighted, so then it shows up.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, great.
Okay.
Not sure which
How to get us both of us.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Here, we'll more this way. All right. We'll talk towards the camera, but if this gets us. Okay.
Yeah, if people can see. Okay, great. So, thanks for coming on. And Abu, I know we've been talking about, things have been stressful lately. How's the week gone for you?
Things have been pretty difficult. There's a lot going on ahead and on top of me right now. A lot of my supervisors are really pushing down, and there's these deadlines that are coming up, and they really want things ASAP. Like it's got to be done now. And there's only so many hours in the day. And I got my girlfriend at night, and she's like, "Oh, what's taking you so long? Why are you still in the office?" And I feel like this person's nagging, and this person's nagging, and I just feel so overwhelmed by everything.
Yeah, it sounded like you have a lot going on between the pressures at work, your girlfriend asking you what's happening. Yeah. How have you been navigating that?
Well, I know my boss pays my bills, and I gotta pay the bills. So I do what I can at work, and when I come back home, I know I'm gonna get an earful, but it's just it's frustrating. But I know I'd rather hear that at home versus hearing it from my boss. Because when I hear it from him, I just feel so much worse. Because I feel like I'm disappointing him, and I'm also disappointing the team.
Got it. So you're noticing some thoughts coming up around just your impact on the team, how your boss is thinking about you.
Right.
Yeah. And then how have you been holding that?
Oh, well, it's just I have it really on top of my head, because if I don't think about it, I kind of want to take back. I kind of want to fool around a little bit, maybe go on Reddit, or kind of want to avoid having to do the work. But if I don't keep it on top of my head, it's like a burner there. It's like a little fire that keeps me, like focused.
Okay. So I'm gonna just pause this there. Thank you for that. I'm gonna bring you back in a few minutes to work on that again. So let's see. I'm just gonna ask people in that list. I'm gonna put that back up, maybe if it's helpful. Share the screen again briefly. Yeah, if we kind of look at that list, did people notice? What do you notice in terms of those parts of the experience, parts of the interaction just now? If anyone wants to put that in the chat, you can, or if anyone's brave enough to unmute.
I noticed a lot of like pressured speech, just how quickly it felt like, Abu was talking, and the flow, like the cadence of how he was expressing, the pile up, I really felt that. And then his hand gestures, compensating and just like kind of dancing with the anxiety.
Yeah, right. There's this inhabiting of that kind of state that you could really hear. Did anyone notice flexibility or inflexibility? Or any kind of patterns of thought?
I can read this out loud. Bethany has
Oh, yeah.
some fusion / rumination around what will happen. For example, partner being mad.
Yeah, exactly, Bethany, you're right. So we can hear kind of some fusion in there, some kind of narrowing down inside the anxiety, right? That's pretty congruent with what we would expect too. Yeah. Um, and like some physical agitation, yeah. And also avoidance kind of through some distraction. Do you wanna say a little bit more about what you noticed there? I like that. If you're either comfortable, just turn on your mic.
Yeah, of course. I guess if I didn't mishear that, he talked about going on Reddit to avoid thinking about, the whole problem. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So there's this kind of like unwillingness to, or feeling of inability to connect with the present with so much stress going on. Yeah. So right, like this wouldn't be an uncommon interaction in therapy with our clients. Right. And there's kind of two directions we could go there. Did anyone notice what I was doing? Not that it was so profound or anything, but just to kind of think about like what are we doing in the presence of that? So people can put that either in the chat or just turn on your mic. Reflection of speech, yeah, exactly. So it's kind of working on doing some validating, right? Just kind of making some room for Abu. And then the question is, what direction do we want to go in there? And we could go in different directions, right? So we could, any thoughts about what you might do there, either from an ACT or a CBT or another perspective?
I was kind of wondering to be more with like what it feels like for him, either some like somatic work or where in your body. I thought Abu was bringing up some really beautiful images, like the fire and right on top of his head. So I feel like he was, from the ACT perspective, like physicalizing already. So I feel like I might, kind of go with that.
Yeah. Right. So we could tune into some of the physical sensations that are going on there, right? If we were to come from we could work on diffusion with the anxious assumptions. Yeah, exactly. We could work from a CBT perspective on, is there a way you could talk to your boss about, kind of lightening up or pacing this work, or maybe even just doing that yourself. Right. So there's a number of ways we could think of intervening, all of which could be helpful. One of and I don't want to suggest any one of those would be better or worse, although as we're in the room with the client, we may sense that there's a responsiveness to one approach versus another. In other words, there may be a persistence in their anxiety in their speech, in their thought, or there might be an ability to slow down, right? And so one kind of thing that we could target, very similar to what Julie was saying, is we could kind of focus on the way the person's showing up in the moment, help them to kind of notice that. So what I'd like to actually do next is kind of jump back into that interaction with Abu, and kind of think about sort of what's going on there. Think about the processes that we're experiencing, and just try some things to disrupt those patterns a little bit. And again, this will be kind of short, and then just kind of observe what's going on, and I'll be curious to hear what people think, what they observe.
That's probably if you could stop sharing. Okay. And then that's us again? Yes. All right. Okay. Oops. There we go. All right, okay. Okay. You keep disappearing. We'll keep with this. So it should be, because we're gonna use this one. So it should be okay. Oh yeah. We've got two different. All right, double bike. All right. So. All right. Yeah. So no, I'm hearing that
it's been intense. You've been even, it sounds like just kind of trying to get out of sort of that stress by, just going online, doing things to try to distract yourself. Feels like it's been a tough week. Yeah, I don't know how does that felt when you've done that?
Well, I'm basically going and Reddit because I don't want to deal with my boss. I don't want to deal with the deadline I got coming up, and what I'm able to get online is at least a little bit of a like a 5 minute break. It's a 10 minute break. I know I see Bob over there. He's on Reddit all the time, and somehow he's able to go and get things in. He does this and he does that. No one's over his shoulder, but the boss is on my shoulder all the time. So I'm feeling it. I like it when I get that little break, but I just gotta keep pushing it, because I know it's gotta get done eventually.
Got it. And then when you come back from the break, how's that been going for you?
It's still rough.
It's rough,
It
yeah.
is. It's just because not only have this deadline, but then as soon as this deadline is over, I know I got one the following week also. So it's just a constant like a cycle, and it's always one deadline over another deadline and another deadline. So I'm just looking for any chance to take a breather when I can.
Okay. And it sounds like that tension's with you as you're doing the work. Is that coming into the day for you, or?
Tension. Well, now that you think about it, it is a good amount of tension. I guess when I'm distracting myself or when I'm kind of online, I just try to avoid it and not really think about it too much. Because I notice when I think about it more, I start feeling worse. And then at that point, I kind of feel like shutting down. And then I know that's even worse. So I'm like, okay, I'd rather just like try my best to just go and do what I need to do.
Right, okay. And it sounds just like there's this sense of kind of trying to get through the day that you're having.
Right.
I'm wondering can you kind of imagine a point earlier today, was this going on for you?
Okay.
Like, in other words, some of what you're describing, did you feel that earlier today at work?
Sure. Yes, I can.
Yeah. What did you kind of notice? Can you bring me into a moment in the day where this was happening, where that tension was there?
Okay. It was around 11 o'clock, and I know I had lunch in an hour, so lunch was coming up soon. So I knew I had a break in the distance, and I knew I saw my boss walking down, so I know like, all right, I gotta make sure I sit up nice. I gotta make sure that I'm really on task, and it was pressure right there. But I knew I had an hour lunch coming up in an hour, so that was like, okay, let me just get through this, and then at least I can go and enjoy a good lunch afterwards.
And if you can you kind of connect with that moment here now?
Okay.
Is that something you can feel as you think about, like, as you bring yourself back?
I can try.
Um, are you finding that difficult to kind of cue back into that?
A little bit, I think, when I'm thinking about that time, and I gotta really focus, and that's part of the problem. Getting able to focus on things is a little tough for me.
Okay.
So okay, well, let me close my eyes right now.
Okay.
Okay. I can get in that mode right now.
Yeah. What are you noticing as you're sort of there at 11? What's going on in your body?
Now that I'm really feeling it, I just kind of feel like this little bit of like this energy through my leg, like I'm kind of like I gotta get through this, so I have like almost a little bit of extra energy rush. So I feel that energy kind of forcing through my body.
Okay. I'm wondering, as you're sort of sitting here kind of in that space, could you just kind of gently take a few breaths? You could even allow your eyes to just go closed as they had been.
Okay.
Just kind of slow yourself down for a moment. As you breathe in, just like ask you to kind of create a sense of space, sense of psychological space in which you can kind of make room for all those feelings. As you breathe out, I'd like to ask you to just kind of let go of any bracing, any tension that you're feeling in your body. Yeah. And just breathing in, sense of space. Breathing out, just letting go of any holding or bracing. I'm going to ask you to just gently stay with that. So you breathe in and out. And I'm gonna ask you what you're noticing, and I'm gonna ask you to keep your eyes closed. And I'm gonna ask you to just go very slowly.
First thing I noticed is I'm actually relaxing my foot. I can feel my heel actually hit the floor. Because usually when I'm in this crunch mode, I'm just constantly shaking my leg and just kind of I feel that energy through the body. But now kind of like letting my whole body kind of sit.
Okay. And anything else that you're noticing? So you kind of slow down. Is there any sensations or emotions that you notice?
One thing is I don't normally notice my chest,
Hmm.
but as I'm taking these deep breaths, I actually feel my like rib cage kind of expand and go down, and I normally don't feel this area so much. So I'm just like, oh, this is different.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Feels nice. You know, it's just kind of it feels like I'm in touch with my body, and I normally don't check in with myself like this. So this is like a different sensation. It feels nice.
Okay. And are you noticing, as you are imagining that kind of moment, at 11, you're there in the office, but now you've slowed down a bit. Noticing any thoughts coming up?
Mm, now that I'm a little bit more, let's say, a little more chill, I kind of imagine my boss right there, but I feel a little bit less agitated or a little bit less on edge.
Okay. And now I'm going to ask you if kind of this is still 11, you have an hour to lunch. From this kind of slowed down place, is there a way that you'd like to see yourself kind of engage in the next hour?
Mm. I do feel a lot more focused, and I feel like maybe I can actually do my tasks instead of kind of bouncing around different things. Like I feel like I feel grounded, and that grounded sensation is like, all right, I can kind of do something now. And I think I'm just so used to jumping around things and thinking about my boss or thinking about home, and now I'm just like I'm easy, I'm kind of chill. So so I could see myself kind of just actually do what's on my mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just going to ask you, as you're inhabiting that and imagining that, could you just kind of return to the breath for another moment? Just kind of breathing in slow, making space, breathing out, just allowing any tension you notice holding to kind of dissolve. And then I'd like you to just internally see yourself kind of engaging with that work. Maybe noticing thoughts and feelings, just kind of expanding out into them, allowing room for them to come there and for you to kind of approach the work in a way that you'd like to see yourself do that work. Kind of inhabit that space. I'm just going to check in gently one more time. Are you able to connect to that?
I just feel more in tune, if that's the right word. Just I got a good flow going. And I think doing some of this breath work, it just gets me, and I'll use the word grounded. I just feel like I'm connecting with something, and that feeling of like it's good energy. I think that's the best way of putting it. And as I feel that good energy, it's like, like you know what? I'm not that bad actually. Like, like I can get this done. It's an hour before lunch.
Okay, so it feels kind of accessible, feels like in a flow a little bit.
Right.
Okay. So I'm gonna just ask you to just kind of stay in contact with your breath and then just allow your eyes to gently open. And I appreciate you kind of going there with me, going back into that stressful moment. Just let me ask you, did that feel like, I realize there's been a lot going on and that doesn't necessarily, address everything, but does that feel like a way you could try to inhabit some of those moments at work when you go in tomorrow?
I think I can. I feel like this was like an actual pause. And I think when I go on Reddit, I'm like looking for that pause. And I'm not really getting a pause. It's more like I want it to be a pause. And now that I'm doing this, I'm like, oh, maybe this is what I was kind of looking for when I was on Reddit. Is it's like I need a break. But Reddit's not really a break. I'm still like active with things. But when I'm actually focusing on my breath, I feel like I'm actually pausing and kind of getting in touch with myself. And that's like, I don't do that very often. So it's nice.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate that observation. That sounds like there's some possibility in there to try something different. Would you be open to kind of you've been doing a lot of work and it really I can see, just all the work you've been doing kind of shown up, like you're able to contact these moments in a different way. Would you be willing to kind of let me know how that goes tomorrow?
Sure.
Yeah, you could text me. Be curious to hear a little bit about that.
Maybe I'll let you know at lunchtime. So I'll let you know how that 11 o'clock hour goes.
That's great. Okay.
Awesome.
So I want to pause this there. Thank you so much, Algo. And I'll just check in with folks. Ask what maybe you noticed, what you noticed in Abu, what you noticed kind of we were doing in the room, in terms of any processes and anything.
I noticed that when you asked him to get in touch with the tension that he felt in his body, it was that kind of contact with the present moment and kind of shifting him to the observer self, like kind of picturing himself at that 11 o'clock hour. And it's kind of cool to kind of see how he was able to kind of be in that space of kind of willingness to be with that discomfort and able to kind of picture himself approaching work in a different way, which I guess he didn't really name, but I was thinking values inside of that, like using that energy and approaching work in a way that maybe felt a little more important to him.
Yeah, right. It was, and that's where I sort of made the comment, like, you've been clearly doing a lot of work. You could be a back therapist or something. He made it easy for me, but right, we can work on, and I appreciated that because we can kind of see that with our clients, but sometimes they're going to be a little more stuck too, right? And we can just work with what shows up as they're doing that, as they're imagining a moment that they can connect with. And we can almost guide them through it in this different way, right? Where we can use kind of the present to coach them through something that very experientially allows them to connect with something they may go back into or face again. But yeah, no, Abu did that, like, skillfully. Thank you, Mallory, for those observations. Any other observations or thoughts? I know we're just at time here. Time really flies.
No question.
Yeah.
So I feel like
Good question in the room. So, yeah.
like during your conversation, like you let him, like as a therapist, you let him a lot throughout the conversation.
Yeah.
And then like he's able to look at himself internally, because I feel like looking at internally is so important, like observing yourself. But at a time when we're like mad or having anger, sometimes it's like when you're by yourself, it's like hard to focus on the current moment. How do you like cope with that?
Yeah. So this is a great question. How do we handle kind of the feeling of like strong emotion showing up in the current moment? Yeah, it's that's again a really challenging and wonderful part of ACT is that we get to practice the same things that our clients need to do. And as we do that, we can help our clients do that better. But a lot of it's practice, right? It's sort of looking at sort of those little And we could guide a client like that too. If it's too hard under certain circumstances, we can say, is there a time that some of this shows up to a lesser degree? And then could you practice there in the space of that? Right. And then by practicing in slightly easier situations, it becomes easier over time to practice in harder ones because we're cultivating a skill. Also, a mindfulness practice can be a really wonderful way to do that because we can sit and be in the presence of our mind and our emotions, and we can work very actively with that in a way that allows us to build those skills and to get kind of more grounded and connected to the life around us, so we can show up.
Yeah, it's helpful.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you so much for coming. I want to be respectful of everyone's time who showed up here, and really appreciate your patience with our technical, and I want to thank Abu for so skillfully navigating that. And if anyone has questions, I suspect there might be a place to send those in, and I'm happy to try and answer questions online, or if there's any resources or anything that I mentioned that you didn't quite get. Please do. And Bethany's pointing out the next ACT process lecture series on values. That is going to be awesome because values is such a great topic, and the presenters are fantastic, and that'll be on February 21st. So yeah, looking forward to that. And again, wishing everyone a fantastic night. It was good to see you, and hope to see you maybe in one of our socials or somewhere else. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.